you just tell them that?
Well, it's the 9th day of September 2010. Our Battle of Plattsburgh commemoration activities continue with an important ceremony, memorial, if you will, at Riverside Cemetery in Plattsburgh. There are other Riverside cemeteries in our country, but for us, this is the most important one. I spent a lot of time here, not only at these ceremonies over at least the last 13 years, but doing the Haunted Haunts ghost tours for the Battle of Plattsburgh Association through the years. I spent some time in this cemetery, Captain Downey's grave, and that's the location at which we are meeting here tonight. We'll have music, we'll have pipers, we'll have dignitaries from several states and countries. It'll be a wonderful program. The Master of Ceremonies will be our friend, City Clerk Keith Hercolo. Others will be here from north of the border, the state of Vermont. Representatives from our governments will be here, and there will be wonderful times to be had by all. So stay tuned. I think you'll enjoy this program in 2010.
In the early 1800s, immediately following the battles here at Plattsburgh, there was a young lady who lived next door to Henri Delourde. Her name was Lucretia Marie Davidson. And she died at a very young age. She was 17. She penned these words: "How sweet the hour when daylight blends, when the pensive shadows of evening's breast. And dear to his heart is the pleasure that lends, for 'tis like the departure of saints to their rest." Lucretia Marie Davidson. Ladies and gentlemen, we have today with us some bagpipers: Adam Blaine, Gerald Tatro, Alan Walker. They're going to enter with the color and honor guard to the tune of "Green Hills of Tyrol, the Battle is Over." Gentlemen. Thank you. We're also joined again this year by the State University of Plattsburgh Cardinal Singers under the direction of Joella Miano. They have chosen a selection, an 1800s Finlandia melody by composer Gene Sibelius. "We Will Be One."
understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all our new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which guides our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Thank you. For the invocation, we'd like to ask Reverend Colin Belton, the rector of Plattsburgh's Trinity Episcopal Church, to come forward, please. Reverend Belton.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we have come together in remembrance of those who died in battle. We come together as allies and friends in the spirit of your love. Men who in death became a beacon of light of reconciliation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth in the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men, as it shone on the men who fought in this battle, who remembered to love their enemy after the battle was over. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let the purpose guide the wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out. May it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power be ever present in the hearts of all today. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Belton. It's my pleasure to introduce to you and to our visitors here in Plattsburgh, the Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh, Mayor Donald Kasperzak.
Congressman, nobody has to clap you right. That's all right. Thank you. As long as you get up, we'll clap for that. I guess it's good afternoon. This is the fourth opportunity I've had to welcome people since I've become mayor to this wonderful Riverside Cemetery Ceremony. And I would just like to start off by saying one person is not here today who has been to many of them, especially the three that I previously had been attending, and that is Addie Shields. And I just want to share a couple comments about how special she was, how direct she was. Maybe that's why we got along so well. And the only other person who could tell me what to do on this weekend besides Mr. Booth was Addie Shields. So I just want to share with all of you that she's missed, and she was an outstanding part of this entire weekend, and she certainly will be in our thoughts. We have many dignitaries here behind me, as well as wonderful people in front of me, and we have folks from Rhode Island, Buffalo, Canada. We have our representatives from Washington, Albany. We have some wonderful people from England and Vermont, which I cannot forget because Mr. Bruce Hyde is a good friend of mine, as well as many of the people behind me, and we welcome him as well, even though we compete with them many times on so many occasions. I would like to welcome you all. My feeling is this particular event is the beginning of a lot of things that are going to happen. We were at Culver Hill this week, and there's a whole lot of other things that have been going on. But I can tell you from my perspective, beginning today, and then going into Friday and Saturday and Sunday, we are going to have an enjoyable weekend. We're going to have a special weekend, and I am so pleased to invite all of you to participate. Enjoy it. The Cardinal Singers, we appreciate you being here. The committee itself for the Battle of Plattsburgh, we will never be able to thank you enough with all your efforts with this. This is the finest, I say weekend, but I would dare say the finest event that I think happens in the North Country throughout the entire year. So with that, I'm glad you're all here. You will hear from some very important people in a few moments. And I hope you all really enjoy yourselves this weekend because it's going to be truly enjoyable and special. So thank you for being here, and we appreciate it.
From the 23rd U.S. Congressional District, Congressman William Owens.
Thank you all for having me here today. This is an important commemoration of the anniversary of the Battle of Plattsburgh. The Battle of Plattsburgh is unique in American history, and it's a great story. Right now, it's hard to imagine that in September of 1814, both the British Army and the Royal Navy were moving south down Lake Champlain's corridor in an attempt to capture control of the lake in Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh was defended by General Alexander Macomb and his troops, and a small fleet of ships on the lake commanded by the young Commodore Thomas McDonough. After a battle on September 11th, the Americans pulled out an unexpected victory. The British were prevented from taking control of Lake Champlain, and soon thereafter, the Treaty of Ghent was signed, which ended the War of 1812. After finishing my service here at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, my first war practice was housed in a building once used as a British Army hospital, located at 48 Court Street. There were great stories in that building, just like there are great stories and pieces of history throughout Plattsburgh in the Lake Champlain area. These pieces of living history are educational opportunities and also offer real potential for local tourism. I want to help the folks take advantage of these tourism opportunities by developing the historic sites related to the Battle of Plattsburgh. We have the potential to create jobs, fill hotel rooms and tables at restaurants, with families coming to learn about a turning point in American history that happened right in our own backyard. The battle also highlights the tremendous spirit of service and love of country that remain the hallmarks of U.S. servicemen and women today. The 1,500 or so troops who picked up arms to defend Plattsburgh and Lake Champlain were young and less experienced than the British Army regulars and the Royal Fleet, who were sent to capture control of the lake. Dedicated to the task at hand, those young American soldiers and their young commanders defended Plattsburgh and sent the British Army back home with a message that the war could not be won. We honor those soldiers today, as well as all the servicemen and women who have called upstate New York home. I would like to specifically recognize all of the soldiers from Fort Drum who are currently serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, and welcome home those who have recently completed their tours of duty. I would also like to recognize all of the U.S. military veterans that call upstate New York home. The anniversary of the Battle of Plattsburgh also coincides with the anniversary of September 11th. Please take a moment to remember those we lost on September 11th, as well as the brave men and women that have given their lives serving our country in its aftermath. Again, it's an honor to be here today to commemorate the anniversary of the Battle of Plattsburgh. God bless the soldiers that defended our city 200 years ago. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Owens. From the 114th New York Assembly District, New York State Assemblywoman Janet Dupree.
Thank you. It's always great to be here, and to follow up on something the mayor said, I'm impressed with the great crowd we have without Addie whipping us into shape. So I think this is pretty good. She is missed, certainly in many ways at many times. This is a great week for Plattsburgh, for the North Country, as we recall so much of our heritage and our history. And every time I've participated in this particular ceremony, and we stand here on these hallowed grounds and recall those poorly equipped, poorly trained group of soldiers who preserved our American history, and particularly that of the North Country and of Plattsburgh. And the amount of gratitude and debt that we owe to all of them, and also to those who serve today. And it's certainly what on September 11th is a day that will always be in our minds and in our hearts. And so as we each leave here and recall the gratitude that we owe for those who participated in the Battle of Plattsburgh, as we put our heads on on our pillows tonight, let's say a very special prayer for those who are still in danger, to preserve the freedom that we so enjoy with our families every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dupree. The former Minister of Public Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Manila, and now Consul General to the Canadas, Mr. Lee McClenny, U.S. Consulate in Montreal.
Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure, special honor to be with you here today. Behind me are a whole bunch of people I've known for quite some time in my duties here, good friends. It's a pleasure to be here among friends, and it's a special pleasure to look out and see so many smiling, friendly faces. We're here today in this quiet cemetery to honor the memory of many brave men who risked all in battle not very far from here. In some cases, indeed, they gave their lives, and some of those people are buried here among us. I think historians would generally agree that the battles that took place here on the land and on the lake were hugely determinative in a very important war in our history, our joint history. And that those battles, and indeed that war, are insufficiently appreciated in historical literature. They are largely overshadowed, I think, in most people's minds, most American minds anyway, by the rockets right there. It's referred to in a book about this. The capture of Washington, D.C., and indeed the burning of the White House by British troops. Marta and Commander Wilson, I'll speak to you about that later. I think, though, the real importance of these battles and of that war is that war, the War of 1812, was the last time that our ancestors, American, Canadian, and British, fought in war against one another. Ever since then, as Assemblywoman Dupree and Representative Owens have poignantly noted, ever since then we've been allies, and we've worked side by side. I think something else that is well appreciated, especially by people in this part of the world, is that the battles in the war played a pivotal role in definitively establishing not only a physical border between Canada and the United States, but also in establishing that we were different and distinct peoples. Peoples with different lives and to a certain degree different histories, people with different courses through life, but parallel courses, side by side, seeking many of the same things and working together to achieve them. Subsequent generations, with that as a starting point, set to work to make what had been a zone of combat into a highway of commerce. Today, that border, just a few miles up the road, is the longest demilitarized frontier in the world, stretching 5,500 miles. That's 8,900 kilometers for our Canadian friends. From the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean to the Arctic Sea. Descendants of those people who died and fought near here today live in peace along that line and working as friends, as family, and as partners in myriad enterprises on both sides of the border. We have built together the world's largest trading relationship. Some 300,000 people at 1.5 billion, with a B, dollars worth of goods cross that border between our two countries every day. It's no exaggeration, I think, to say that this friendly relationship has brought more peace, more stability, and more prosperity to more people than any other relationship anyplace else in the world. It's something for which we should be proud. And it is ultimately something of a debt that we owe to the brave man who fought and died here so many years ago. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Mr. McClennan. Mr. Bruce Hyde is the Commissioner of Tourism and Marketing for the state of Vermont. He is here today representing the state of Vermont's governor, Mr. James Douglas. Mr. Bruce Hyde. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here for Governor Douglas. He would give this much more justice as he is a real history buff and history major and all, but I'll do my best. I look at this region and the rich history that we have, just coming off the 400th anniversary of Champlain coming into this region, and the end of the conflict really between our friends, as we've just heard. But I think it's important to note too that I believe there were about 2,500 Vermonters that came over here to defend this region back in this war. And I think the bunch of the militia here went west because they thought they were coming in from another point. But anyway, it is great to be here, and I look at this lake as the boundary between Vermont and New York, but it really is the body of water that joins us. And we do compete on some things, as the mayor said, but I'd really like to throw out opportunities that we can both work on together to get more people to this area, regardless of which side, and to really go out there and be able to promote the history that so many people don't realize what happened in the 1700s and the early 1800s. And so it's great to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. The Honorable Claude Bachand is a member of the Canadian Parliament and represents the St. Jean-sur-Richelieu riding of Quebec. Mr. Bachand.
Yes, good afternoon. It's pronounced Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu.
Thank you. I cleared your name.
Okay, my name is okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the committee for inviting me here today. It's a great honor for me to be here. You're all probably asking yourselves, who's that crazy Canuck talking to us? Well, I'm your first neighbor at the north here, and probably the British troop that came here for face defeat came from my riding from Saint-Jean. They probably came up the Riverside Cemetery, and they were defeated here. And why I'm here today, it's very important for me to be here because a few years ago we started with Vermont and New York State, Plattsburgh and Burlington, a triangle of excellence. And we're working, since then, we've been working on all sorts of issues. As a matter of fact, the latest one was the arrival of Champlain here in 1609. So it's important for me to be here, and it's important to commemorate these things, because if we have a great quality of life today in this triangle of excellence, it's because of these people who stood up and gave their lives. Many of them gave their lives to assure us that the future generation will have that quality of life. So it was important for me to be here. I'd like to congratulate you for the battle that you won. But I want to remind you there were many battles, and there was one in 1775 in my riding, and we won that one. It was General Montgomery that came down with Benedict Arnold, and for 49 days we hold them in Saint-Jean. And the winter was so advanced, when they had the time to go to Quebec City, they were so exhausted there, they had a defeat there. But now, what I always tell when I come to this ceremony here in this cemetery is that we're one of peace now, and we'll stay that way. It's very important. The only battle we have to do now is unite ourselves to make sure that our quality of life will stand. And there are a lot of people there in the world that don't like our quality of life. And there are some men and women that are fighting to make sure that we maintain that quality of life. So it was a very great pleasure for me to be here. I'll be here as soon as much as possible, every year if I can. But I'm your equivalent of your congressman here. I have the riding nearby, and that's why we're very occupied. I'm very glad I meet him for the first time here, and I have a new friend now in Washington, so when I go into the lobby there, Bill will be on my list. He said it publicly in front of some people earlier, so we'll have to stand by his word. It was a pleasure for me to be here. Thanks again, and I hope you have nice festivities.
Thank you, sir. The former ambassador to Hungary and Romania, now the Consul General, Ms. Marta Mozenska, the Canadian Consulate in Buffalo.
Thank you. Don't we have great representatives on both sides of the border? And me, I would assist of talking about the torching of the White House. And I think it's very appropriate these days. I'm honored to be here today to represent the Government of Canada and by extension to honor and remember the British, Canadian and American forces that served and perished here during the War of 1812. The well-known words of the British poet Lawrence Binyon call upon us to never forget those who have died on fields of battle. Quote, "They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them." Unquote. May these souls laid to rest on this land be regularly and forever honored for their love and contribution to the country and for the greatest of sacrifices that they have made. Well, today we remember these individuals as honorable countrymen with families, passions, and more God-given spirit than time. Our daily actions must also reflect a larger memory of heritage and inheritance. Our collective histories call upon us to regard and name all of the fallen as peace, brotherhood, and goodwill, for maintaining a true sense of brotherhood between our three nations and cultivating even greater expressions of peace and cooperation seem to be the highest tribute that we can give to those who paid so dearly with their lives. The upcoming bicentennial of the War of 1812 offers us all great opportunities to advance these goals. Supporting educational opportunities to learn about the War of 1812 and working to cultivate the new 21st century forms of peace and cooperation between our nations and with our First Nations communities are the cornerstone of the work to commemorate this defining conflict. In the Niagara region, where I am based at the moment, we have established a Youth to Youth 1812 educational campaign, an initiative which aims to raise awareness about the legacy of the war as well as the region's local history. Now in its second iteration, a group of spirited high school students will be making presentations throughout the academic year to fellow students across the region. Perhaps there are some budding young historians here in the North Country region that might also like to bring the local history alive in this way. Also, as a member of the 1812 Bicentennial Legacy Council, I have helped to support binational efforts to bring broad-based attention to the importance of the bicentennial through both the PBS documentary on the War of 1812, which is scheduled to air in October 2011, as well as the development of a website, a binational portal which is now being used by many, if not all, 1812 historic sites and regions across the US and Canada. I hope and trust that both of these initiatives will prove to be useful vehicles for local interests related to the important Battle of Plattsburgh. Following the bicentennial tagline, 200 Years of Peace, we are also very committed to make the most of this commemoration to advance our daily experience of living peace. In Niagara, a cross-border trail of peace gardens is growing and blossoming, along with new regional partnerships, and I hope that these can be extended again to the North Country. We are, after all, children of a common mother, and brethren dwelling together in unity. These powerful phrases, inscribed on the Peace Arch located at the border between Washington and British Columbia, and erected in 1921 to commemorate the Treaty of Ghent, speak to the great peace that is the lasting legacy of the War of 1812. Thank you very much, and I hope to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you. We're also joined today by Commander Rob Wilson, the UK Exchange Officer and member of the Joint Military Operations Faculty at the United States Navy War College in Newport, Rhode Island. Commander Wilson.
Well, good afternoon. Can I just say what a tremendous honour and pleasure it is to be with you for this weekend. Perhaps it's only appropriate on this day of all days that the Brit gets to speak last. But my task hasn't been made any easier by the fact that I'm following such lucid and eloquent speakers in those who've already addressed you, so thank you very much. Okay, I thought as a British naval officer it would be appropriate really for me to say a few words about Commodore George Downey the man, an individual who I clearly have a lot of empathy with as a brother of my service and a countryman, but also as an individual who's commanded 2 naval warships in recent years. I have a great deal of empathy with the task that he had before him. And what I mean by that is that in each case I took the warships that I commanded out of refit, and it took me no less than a year to get them ready for any sort of military operation. That's just how long it takes to build a team. So when I consider that this gentleman who died 4 years my junior had just 16 days from the launch of Confiance to battle, it's an incredible thing to imagine. And I think that that takes a great deal of courage. Now in the end, Downey was beaten by a superior body of men who held the fate of your then young nation in their hands. And I think that's also something that's quite incredible when you look at it in retrospect. And look, no officer of the Royal Navy glorifies or takes any pleasure in defeat of any kind. But as has already been said, I take comfort from the fact that this particular battle was so instrumental in turning the tide in the relationship between our 2 nations, and was followed by a period first of cooperation, then alliance and friendship, which has stood our 3 nations, in very good stead in the intervening years, and will be absolutely vital as we continue to negotiate the stormy seas of the 21st century. Thank you very much.
We're honored today by the presence of Mr. and Mrs. Roy Carter on their 8th visit from Marlborough, England. And Miss Jo Carter is a descendant from Colonel Willington, who was killed at Culver Hill and is buried here. Also returning to pay homage to their famous ancestor, Commodore Thomas McDonough, are Mr. and Mrs. Jim and Dorothy McDonough. Behind me? There. And their daughter and granddaughter, Margaret and Megan Timms. Hello. Mr. Hugh McDonough. Welcome back. Dr. Alan and Mrs. Anita Fellows and their daughter, Linda McDonough Fellows. We're also pleased today to have Commander Wilson's family with him, Miss Tara Wilson and their children, Alice and Morgan. In Dunblane, several years ago, there was a massacre at a primary school. And in response to that massacre, a young gentleman wrote, he was a bagpipe major, and he wrote a song called Bells of Dunblane, and it was meant as a testament and also in memory of the words that couldn't be said. And it reflects, or the author tried to reflect, the feeling of the people that were mourning. On the bagpipes, gentlemen, Bells of Dunblane, a Scottish anthem. Our honor guard and firing party today are members from the American Legion Post 1619 in Plattsburgh, the War of 1812 reenactors representing the American 15th U.S. Infantry, the Peru Militia Company, and the British 3rd East Kent Buffs. The flag bearer carries a replica of the American 15-star flag, the Star-Spangled Banner. It was routine in the Commonwealth military camps at the early part of the 17th century to change the guard and have at each guard station, the adjutant would have played the guard mount. And at the end of that, signaling it was time for the day to end, the last post. The last post is a piece that has taken on a new meaning. It is a final farewell to those comrades. Today, a wreath will be laid by Congressman Owens, Commander Wilson, and Mrs. Carter in memory of our collective brothers, adversaries in battle, commemorated for their honor and bravery, and at peace now in death. Mr. William Long will play the last post for us as those wreaths are laid. Joe, we have a wreath for you for your... Come back and get that.
Picky! Fire! Shoulder! Militia! Freeze head! Fire!
Front, face. From sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Reverend Belton.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He cause His Spirit to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May He lift His countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Welcome to Plattsburgh, those of you from out of town. Those of you who are from Plattsburgh, and possibly this is the first time you've been here, come back and see us. We're good people, we think. On the way out the door, as we say, the gentlemen have chosen Scotland the Brave, and if you would, at your pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Well, we were pretty lucky again. The majority of the showers that were circling the area held off throughout most of the ceremony today. A couple of drops fell. You might have seen one on the lens of this little camcorder. My partner Calvin is elsewhere. As you know, Hometown Cable has been covering quite a bit of Battle of Plattsburgh activities for the last 13 years at least. And it's always a pleasure for us to do that. Tomorrow on the 10th day, we'll be traveling to Crab Island for a very special memorial service with a plaque. My friend John Rock will get us across the Lake Champlain waves for that celebration tomorrow morning, as we're doing this on the 9th day. That'll be the 10th. Battle of Plattsburgh Day is September 11th. As everybody has mentioned, there will be a nice parade. And now the rain falls a little bit harder as I came for a little dry spot inside the tent here on Riverside Cemetery. I might mention that if you haven't been here, you should make an effort to visit. Not just Downey's grave, but the other graves in this cemetery, because there are some very famous area politicians buried here, along with officers from both sides. And this isn't the only place where people from both countries are buried, because Crab Island is a spot where many of those who were injured in the Battle of Plattsburgh were taken to a field hospital there after the battle. Quite a few of the soldiers who died in the battle were buried in a common grave that includes both sides, the British and the American forces. A number of local people have assumed the responsibility of helping to recover that island so that most of us can be free of poison ivy and go out there and look at the great monument. Imagine where that common grave for those sailors is located, to walk around the island and imagine what it was like when it was a very popular park more than 100 years ago. Thanks to all those people who watch this program on a regular basis. Thanks to the people who participate every year in these Battle of Plattsburgh commemorative events. It's very important that we remember, as I've said numerous times before, and it wasn't me who coined the phrase, we must remember where we've been in order to know where we're going. In this area, the Champlain Valley, both sides of the lake, and in Canada, steeped in history. And we've been so fortunate to be able to cover so many of those events. Myself on the radio business from 1961 until 1997, joining up at that time with Calvin Castine and Hometown Cable to cover so many of these events in the last 13 years. As I mentioned to our audience numerous times early in the game, we thought 2014 was going to be a long ways away, and it was then. But guess what? Here we are in 2010. And we're only 4 years from that celebration, so I guess Calvin and I won't have to push each other in wheelchairs. We can make it, and that's for sure.
Yeah, it's called a gorget.
Special thanks to the people who are reenactors here in the North Country. This has been a fabulous addition to all these ceremonies to have so many reenactors, all up and down the eastern seaboard and elsewhere in our country and in Canada. I wonder who's going to win the rooster race. For those who don't know what the rooster is, read your history books and find out. See you later, Keith Hergelo. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for watching the program. For those of you who would like to make a comment or suggestion, please get in touch with me My email address is Gord and the letter K, that's Gordand, the letter K at AOL.com. You can contact Calvin.
Lasting till the 20th century.
Send your generous checks if you'd like to see these programs continue. He's on the Ridge Road in Champlain. These programs are available. I'm sure more than 5,000 of them right now at HometownCableNetwork.com and at Plattsburgh.com. You can watch them on the internet, and this program will be right there very shortly after it's been recorded. So send money, give us your suggestions, let us know where you think you'd like to have us be. I didn't bring an umbrella, so I'm going to stay under the tent for a little while here today. But I urge you to come here with your family, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, as I've done so many times. This is the grave of George Downey. You can read the inscription on the stone as we've done so many times. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.
I just throw it in my car because, well, we just go on top. Talk about the back. You want us to go over to the camp and set it up? Better friend than that other guy.